Irma Gröse is one of the most infamous female overseers of the 20th century. Despite her young age and angelic appearance, her horrific crimes against humanity remain shocking even more than half a century later. Coming from a large family in Germany, young Irma faced tragedy at the age of 13. Her mother tragically passed away, unable to bear her husband's infidelities. The 5 children, left in the care of an indifferent father, grew up in difficult circumstances. 2 years later, Irma dropped out of school, finding salvation and meaning in the union of German girls. In 1942, at the age of 19, she volunteered to join the SS. Beginning her service in the Ravensbrück concentration camp, Irma soon established herself as a cruel and, in her own way, talented warden. In March 1943, she independently secured a transfer to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where in a short period of time she rose to senior warden, second only to the commandant. Such was the fate of a young woman with the face of an angel and the ferocity of a demon. Her path epitomizes a dark page of history when human life was devalued every day. In the camp, Gröse was called the beautiful beast, the blonde devil, and the angel of death, which emphasized her cruelty. More than 30,000 women and girls were under her will. Gröse was in charge of an area of 30 barracks, each housing about 1,000 prisoners. Irma herself looked dazzling. Her perfect hairstyle and blue jacket matching her eyes misled newcomers. Every day the weary prisoners in tattered clothes encountered a man who knew what comfort was: hot water, a warm bed, a hearty meal. Irma's constant companion was a whip encrusted with pearls. After liberation, one of the prisoners, Gisela Pearl, remembered Irma as one of the most attractive girls. Walking around the campgrounds, she always caught the eye. Her beauty was envied and admired at the same time. However, Irma was not limited to her looks. She was a frequent witness to Dr. Mengeler's experiments and selected victims for him. What she saw may have inspired her own cruel experiments on prisoners. Irma Gröse possessed a frightening passion for inflicting suffering. Pregnant women were of particular interest to her. She did not touch them before they gave birth, but after the birth she bound their legs and watched them suffer for hours. Most could not withstand such abuse, and those who survived were sent to the gas chamber by her personal decision. Gröse enjoyed taking people's lives personally. Her sadistic nature did not only manifest itself in these gruesome rituals. Gröse kept her own kennel of dogs, in which they were kept starved and sometimes not fed at all. It was done on purpose. If one of the prisoners felt exhausted, a pack of hungry dogs immediately descended on him. What happened next is not difficult to guess. She used iron-toed boots to beat her victims unconscious. Irma wore special shoes with padded iron and pointed toes. Such shoes she used to beat up prisoners who were guilty of something, or just those who caught her eye in the wrong place and at the wrong time. On any occasion, Gröse whipped the prisoners with her whip, very often stopping only when the unfortunate had already shown no signs of life. In rare moments of favorable mood, Irma could offer games inviting the prisoners to test their fear for strength, as, for example, in Russian roulette. This ostensible benevolence, however, was only a temporary evasion of her habitually cruel behavior. Despite her general inhumanity, some prisoners recalled Gröse's acts of kindness. In one instance, she transferred a sick woman to work in the kitchen with improved rations. In a strange way, music seemed to appeal to her. She was particularly lenient towards musicians among the prisoners. This elusive contrast emphasized the complexity of her character, full of contradictions. Considering herself the most beautiful girl of Auschwitz, Irma was an outspoken nymphomaniac. Among her lovers were both Dr. Mengele and the warden of the Auschwitz camp, but not satisfied with pleasures with male representatives, as a true nymphomaniac, Gröse periodically amused herself with women, choosing for herself partners among the prisoners. This once again proved the perversity of the warden's psyche and possibly just deviations developed on the background of constant cruelty and sadism. From the testimony of a 20-year-old prisoner of the camp, Tatiana Samsonova. We were brought to the Birkenau camp on May the 24th, 1944. In the echelon there were 800 people, only Russians and Belarusians. Besides, 3 echelons of Jews from Hungary arrived together with us. All these 4 echelons were stopped by the Germans near the crematorium. The Germans sent all the Jews to the crematorium and burned them there. All of us Russians were taken away, and for some reason they did not burn us. This particular train was met by the senior warden, Irma Gröse. Armed with a whip and a gun, she personally selected those who would end up in the crematorium. That day there were 2,000 of them. Some Irma chose for herself, both men and women. There were terrible rumors about her unbridled passion in Birkenau. It was said that she chose new prisoners for sexual abuse every day, then lined them up and shot whoever she could. With the approach of the Red Army, Irma Gröse was involved in the transfer of prisoners to the Ravensbrück camp, and later she was transferred to Bergen-Belsen. Here, on April 17, 1945, she was taken prisoner by British troops. At that moment, amidst the devastation of the camp, some 60,000 people remained alive, while hundreds of bodies of prisoners remained unburied, a reminder of the brutality of the time. After being detained, Irma and other warders were forced to dig mass graves until an investigation could begin. The case of Gröse and her colleagues was tried at the Belsen trial, which began on September 17, 1945. The evidence presented by the tribunal unequivocally pointed to the guilt of all 45 defendants. Irma tried to justify herself, claiming that her participation was forced, but she realized that no mercy was expected. The court sentenced her to death by hanging, scheduling her execution for November 4, 1945. In her last letter, Irma said she was prepared to die for the ideals of the Third Reich. The location of her burial site is not officially marked, but modern neo-Nazis claim to have found it, and the place has meanwhile become a pilgrimage site for young followers.